Our scripture this morning is from the 7th chapter of Matthew. Jesus is teaching. Anyone who hears my words and puts them into practice is like the sage who built a house on a rock. When the rainy season set in, the torrents came and the winds blew and buffeted the house. It didn't collapse because it had been set solidly on rock. Anyone who hears my words but does not put them into practice is like a fool who built their house on sandy ground. The rains fell, the torrents came, the winds blew and lashed against the house, and it collapsed and was completely ruined. Jesus finished speaking and left the crowd spellbound at his teaching, because he taught with an authority that was unlike their religious scholars. Ancient words for today's understanding.
Having microphone issues, so. Well, thank you for the puppet show. I really appreciate it. I thought it was really good. It gives Mr. Monkey a little bit of a rest. But thank you, it was very good. Well, we come to the ending of the Sermon on the Mount today, the longest sermon series I've ever done. But again, I chose it because I know how hard these times are. And I think sometimes we just need to remember what home base is in Christianity. That can be really easy to forget when you look at televangelists, MAGA Christians. You just wonder, somebody's got to be wrong here, right? I mean, we can't both be right. You can't say don't judge, but also you need to judge everybody. There's just some tension, some creative tension in the church. And I personally believe that Jesus would choose the scapegoats over the church. I think that's what we're talking about today, that the religious officials were the problem in Jesus' day. The people who were able to judge other people so impassionately, the people who thought that they were objective, people who thought they were exercising common sense. I will admit to be a lefty. But to me, the most arrogant position is not to realize that you're coming from a different position. To think you stand at the objective center of the universe and you're a moderate, to me, is the most arrogant thing you can possibly say. We're all looking through slanted lenses. And I think that's a lot of what is missing, is the realization of that. When we look at our passage today, it looks like it plays into the hands of Christian nationalists. Anybody that doesn't build on my teachings is building on sand. That sounds like something a fundamentalist would say. That if you don't found your life and the nation on doctrinaire Christianity, that your house will be built on sand. The important thing I've tried to accomplish during this series is to really give a reminder that Jesus was just beginning to speak. So when he says this, he's not saying, unless you become a doctrinaire Christian, your house is built on sand. All they've heard is the Sermon on the Mount. That's all of Christianity that's happened yet. So he's not saying, study the Apostles' Creed and get back to me. He's not saying, give generously. Plant your seed in this ministry. He's also not saying, judge or you'll be judged. It's such a simple living message, but we impose 2,000 years of Christian arrogance on top of this moment. But if we just look at the Sermon on the Mount and realize that's the heartbeat of Christianity, Jesus never saw Augustine. He never saw Calvin or Luther. So he couldn't have signed off on any of that. He had plenty of opportunities to say, I'm your Savior. I'm going to be crucified in a little bit, and, if you want to be saved, you need to grovel at my feet. I'm not very objective, as I said. So we have to remember when Jesus says, follow me, he's standing right in front of them. Right? This is not a disembodied spirit speaking through the ages saying, become a Christian. This is one human being talking to other human beings, trying to embody what he's trying to teach them. He's trying to be a good example of what it means to be a human being in the cosmos. What this passage asks us to think about, and I think this is maybe as important a question as there is it asks us, on what foundation are you building your life? You don't have to be religious, you don't have to be Christian, but what are the assumptions you're building your life on? What are the values you're betting your life on? To take a moment to remember that from time to time. Because when you hit a storm, Jesus is saying, if your life is built on fantasy, if it's built on comfortable lies, it will be devastating. If you're basing your life on things that are passing, then there will become a time in your life when that's going to cause a lot of pain. Every one of us will have a last day, and some of us will see that coming. We may be in a hospital, we may be in an old folks' home. But we will need to make our peace with reality. And at that point, it won't matter what we want reality to be. Nothing is more devastating than when religious experts tell you that life is what you want it to be. Jesus is going to point right at life and say, this is it. So did Buddha. And he's saying the sacred is there in your ordinary, everyday life. Build your life on that. You've known people who faced death courageously. You've read about people that faced the same kind of calamities politically that we're facing, maybe worse. And yet they found courage and peace and joy. I think Jesus is saying, if you're looking for a teacher, that's where I would start looking. So we're asking today, what is the foundation that you're building your life on? I think it's something we need to come back to throughout our journey. And what I'm going to suggest today, just kind of looking at our passage and trying to wrap up the Sermon on the Mount series, is I want to point out three things that I think have fallen out of traditional Christianity that we see there in the early writings. I think we forget that Jesus was a mystic and is speaking in mystical poetry. I think we forget that Jesus was a socialist. Sorry. And finally, that he based everything on love, not power, not fear. And so when you're choosing what path you take, even if somebody really has a great smirk, and they sound so sure of themselves, Jesus said, look at the fruit of the tree. If they're mean, if they're ignorant of science, if that's what it takes for their religion to work, get out of that boat right now. and look at your own experience and see what's true there. Healthy religion illumines your life. But how many of you were taught that? How many of you were taught a religion that made your path clearer? And how many of us were taught a religion that has to be explained itself? So I want to look at these three factors. And the first is the idea that Jesus was a mystic. And the reason that's important is because he's speaking in mystical poetry. When he says things like, you have to come through me, he's using the poetry of the Sophia passages. We looked at that in a series some time back. But it's the wisdom of the universe. Maybe it's a person, but it may just be the way things are. It may be the way of things. Sophia was an embodiment of that. And if you look at poetry, it says things like, take my yoke upon you. I was there at the beginning. Everything was created through me. So Jesus is talking poetically. He's not an egomaniac. He's not saying, come to me, grovel to me as an individual. He's actually calling you deeper within yourself. When he says it's me, he's saying that truth is what we are. All of us, every one of us, is the Word made flesh. Whatever the cosmic wisdom is, we are expressions of that. So when Jesus is starting off, again, he doesn't say, go to Turning Point and see who to hate. As good of advice as that is. Find out who to blame your problems on. But for God's sake, never take responsibility. That's great advice. But Jesus takes people away from their temple. He takes them away from their business, away from the city, and to the countryside. And this is the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount, remember? And he has them sit down and he says, study the birds, study the flowers. Now, why does the church not teach that? Because we forgot. We lost, right? We got lost in the plot line. Jesus was a mystic. And when he speaks, he's trying to guide us deeper within who we truly are until we see our connections to everything and we feel that. That mystical experience is not, I think it's a mistake to see it as supernatural. It's something that happens at moments of bliss, where you feel yourself at one with everything. And you look at a tree or an animal as your family. And when that happens, you are in bliss. Don't forget that. Jesus is saying, unpack that experience. One person that had experienced a lot was William Blake. And I think he's talking about the sort of mystical vision. He says, to see the world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wild flower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. We don't have to go somewhere else, right? We don't have to go searching somewhere else. Whatever the sacred is right here in the very heart of our experience. And Jesus is calling us there. But he's speaking as a mystic. So when he talks about love, he's not saying about you as an individual having to love other people. That's not always possible. If somebody's wronged you, hurt you, traumatized you, you probably can't, as a person, manufacture all these positive feelings. But if you realize that you're interconnected, if you realize whatever happens to one of us happens to the rest of us. In Hinduism, that's called the great self. That sense of life as a whole, as our larger life. And what we do to the other, we do to ourselves. I think that's the gift Jesus is trying to give us. First gift. The second gift Are you ready? It's always a matter of time, right? Jesus was a socialist. Now, I know that's an uncomfortable idea, but one of the reasons why Christianity isn't helping anybody is because we've taken the guts out. The fact that, yes, you're interconnected with everybody, but that's got to affect your life. He's saying you have to act on that. Reading the words is not what he's talking about. He's talking about us taking care of each other. I can't love you if I'm putting you in a detention camp. That selective love is not what Jesus is talking about. I was reading the other day, and I probably shouldn't use this as an example. It'll be the first time I've done anything inappropriate. I'm sitting there on YouTube, which is my life. That's my social life. And I see Melania Trump. And she's giving a speech. Don't grimace, I haven't said what it is yet. And she says this. She says, "A child's soul knows no borders, no flags." And I'm thinking, oh my God, she's awakened. Oh my God, how's that going to fit in with MAGA? And then I realized she was talking about the children in Ukraine. White children. Now, why is it that she can see that with white children? Children see no border, no boundary. How do you translate that to our border? Do you remember when she went to visit families in detention camps and wore the coat that said, "I don't care, do you?" My mom always taught me, like, respect all religions. But I think we're at a time when we need to say, when people are faking Christianity, it is not Christianity if you're being cruel to somebody. You can't get from the Sermon on the Mount to that. It's easy. Start with John Calvin. You can do it all day long. Start with Charlie Kirk, and you'll be great at it. But if you let Jesus have a vote on what Christianity is, you can't get there. You cannot get to fundamentalism from the Sermon on the Mount. And when Jesus is preaching, that's all people have. So what I'm saying is, if we're talking about getting back to the real Christianity, that's where you start, with what Jesus taught, with what the church has thrown out of the way, or called a footnote. Did you see the Turning Point is going to have a counter halftime for the Super Bowl? The NFL is letting someone from Puerto Rico do the halftime show. And he doesn't even speak English. I mean, he actually speaks English. He's actually from the United States, Puerto Rico. But it shows you, when you take away the disguises, we're talking about white supremacy. When the president does travel bans, and it's just a coincidence, they all happen to be people of color. Was it 37 countries whose major population is people of color? If you don't see that, you've got your eyes closed. And an abusive white male privilege that is devastating in the lives of other people. So when I talk about socialism, you don't have to use that word. But can you put feet on the call to compassion? Or are you just going to give charity? Are we going to leave people in their misery and drop crumbs of bread? Or is the church going to stand up for people? I'm so proud of what the church is doing all around the country. There was a Presbyterian minister that was hit with pepper the pepper ball. If the church is silent during this time, I believe we've renounced Jesus Christ. If there's ever a time to stand up for our human family, this is it. And one of the ways is to realize that poverty is the worst violence there is. Poverty is terrorism. It's just state terrorism, state violence. So somebody has to speak up for the people who've been locked out. If it's not us, I don't know who it's going to be. The final thing is that it has to be love. All you need to know, whether somebody's a false teacher or not, is if they come from love or fear, love or anger. Almost ended it right there. To realize that when you realize that your only calling is to love, that takes such a burden off. You don't have to figure out who's the scapegoat. If somebody's good, you love them. If somebody's bad, you love them. If they're oppressing somebody, you love them in a different way. But all of our activism has to come from that compassion, or it becomes a part of the violence. Jesus started off with the Beatitudes. It's been a long time, so you may not remember. But the Beatitudes are a new definition of happiness. Blessed are the poor, blessed are the weak, blessed are the persecuted. What it's saying is your true joy comes from your character, not from your fate. Do you realize how much more stable your foundation for living will be if you stop defining yourself by what other people think about you, or about whether you've been successful in the culture, or whether good things or bad things have happened, and realize that you are a light to the world, and your only assignment is to shine. Nothing can defeat you that does not make you hate. So, we're at the end of the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus is talking to people, and they're probably wondering if he's crazy. As things get worse and worse, they'll realize that he's given them the vessel to navigate the storm that they will enter. The names have changed. It's not Herod anymore. I won't fill in the modern versions. But you can figure that out. But to know that you have within you a power that can stand up to that. That Christianity is a call to navigate the storms of life without losing your peace of mind, without losing your joy. So I hope this week you'll ask yourself the question, what am I building my life upon? Is it things that will be permanent? Are there things that I'll be able to hold on to? Or are they somebody else's opinion? Is it some goal that somebody else gave me when I was a child and that no longer serves me? Jesus is calling us to our own hearts. Jesus doesn't want to be your Lord. Jesus doesn't want to be your boss. Jesus is calling from within you. And when he says, follow me, he's saying, be yourself. Blossom. Give yourself to the mystical experience of the interconnectedness of all things. And then give that reality in your life. Politics is just how we treat other people. Make it on earth as it is in heaven. And finally know that when you're confused and you don't know where to turn, that love is always the answer. I'm going to close with a quote from Dostoevsky, which was one of my favorite sort of creative expressions of love. He says, love all God's creation, both the whole and every grain of sand. Love every leaf, every ray of light. Love the animals, love the plants. Love each separate thing. If you love each thing, you will perceive the mystery of God in all. And once you perceive this, you will afterwards grow every day to a fuller understanding of it, until you come at last to love the whole world with a love that will then be an all-embracing and universal. Well, this is my understanding of the text. We'll take a moment for you to consider what you would consider to be truth.